Right, so we're back for Sometimes Record, episode number 31. This is part 2, and we're recording this on July 8, 2020. I've got with me Martin Liedtke coming to us from Wales, did you say?
Wales in Britain, yeah.
And did you grow up in Wales? Is that where you're originally from?
Yeah, I'm from the capital, Cardiff City.
Are you a proud Welshman?
I am a very proud Welshman. Do not call me English.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we got that sorted. See, I like to ask people when they come onto their shows, are you proud of your country? So if I'm speaking to an American, like, are you a patriotic American? Do you care about your country? Because for me, this is how I got into all this podcasting. I cared about Australia, and I felt like there were some things that Australians didn't know that I was starting to learn and I wanted to share. And I used to focus a lot on Australian news, whereas these days, I still want to see Australia do well, but I don't have that same concern, if I can put it like that. And it seems to me that the countries are all breaking down the same way. So anybody who pins their hopes on what they think their nation should be, I think Martin is going to be disappointed.
That's 100% agree. Yeah, I try not to do the nationalism. It's in me because Welsh people are pretty fanatical about being Welsh because there's not many of us. But yeah, you're exactly right. It's all just melded into one another now. I don't see any distinction between one country and another, not anymore.
And if you look at the way that young people live their lives now, it seems completely homogenous already. I mean, look at this news about TikTok lately. I don't use TikTok, but I can tell you the young people here do. I'm guessing the young people in America and Wales do as well. They're all using the same app on the same device, and it's the same method of communication. These short clips, usually of people dancing or being silly. That's a complete homogenization of the youth already. They can call themselves Australian or Vietnamese or whatever, but they're all the same.
No, I totally agree. And I see them exactly the same. Yeah, no.
So you gave us, when I said give us the elevator pitch for Mudflood, you gave us more than an elevator pitch, you gave us a tour of the building. So you covered a lot of things there. This Tartarian business, I know it's related to Mudflood, but if you could give us like a 1-minute synopsis, what is this Tartarian theory? What's the basic overview of it?
Well, Tartaria is it's not only a name, it's an ideal with a lot of people. If you study old maps, old literature, I have a collection of books. I'll name one, John Strew's The Voyage of. But most of Asia was Tartaria up until a relatively recent period. Even quite a bit of Europe we can establish, and we think they came down sort of through Alaska, populated large parts of America too at some point. So at some point in history, this place was Tartaria everywhere. But the civilization was stolen, as I said, by a sea people who came into port with ways that corrupted society, the mindset of society. I'll give you an example. Firewater to the Red Indians of America, whiskey, or opium to the Chinese, and they did the population. They brought stuff into port. They run the trade. They run the banks. They run all of the financial networks and systems. They are the Phoenicians. And how do we know? Because we know our rights, because we're living. I tell you what we know. Next time you walk in your city centre, have a look at your civic buildings, and you will see classical themed statues staring right down at you. These are for your Phoenicians, okay? You can call them Greek Olympian gods, or Concord, or Zeus, or Apollo, or whoever. They are them. This is this classical theme, and it's tainted, it's evil. It seems that the establishment itself is based on a Babylonian death cult. It seems that, like the Catholic Church and a lot of these institutions, also involved with this Babylonian death cult, which is highly sinister. It seems a small percentage of the population that control everything have made this happen, and everyone's living in its paradigm, and they're not even aware of it. They use the language. Everyone casting spells on one another using the Phoenician language. Phonetics. Speaking of phonetics, it's Phoenician language, which is dialects and tones, and it causes through vibrational quality and invocation magic in this place. There's certain languages, like in the Welsh language, for example, which has less vowels and less harshness than this Germanic tone that we've got. Even English people or English-speaking people have this Germanic tone, harsh vowels, etc. a lot of languages out there, but they've been sort of taken out of society. Welsh language is never supported, and it was basically you were punished for speaking it back in the 60s, 50s. So this phonetic or this Phoenician language is spells, magic spells people are doing on one another. You're thinking in English as well, so that's dangerous. But yeah, I think that I don't want to put things into a religious context because I go towards simulation ideas these days, but it would seem that there is something that comes into our conscious, our psyche, messes with us. It seems that our subconscious, even though it's part of us, is not our friend and it works against us. It's us. And you have this constant argument, this battle going on in your mind, good or bad, or just a decision. But for me, it's simple in this place. I think that everything is in equal and opposites. I think that everyone is equally good and evil. I think whether they choose to be evil or they choose to be good is what determines them. I think everything in this place is drove in opposition of one another. Everything. You look at everything. My taste of tea over that tea. My taste of cigarette over that. An opposition to something else, or musical taste, or everything is. If you took that opposition out of all of reality, all of the world's ills would be over in an instant. Because there's enough to draw upon. The Buddhists practice this. They don't get involved in all of the opposition. They are emphatic towards it, yes, but they just don't get involved. So if anyone drops dead over there, well, that's just the way of life. Okay, I'll run the show. Relatively unaffected by it. Yeah, I'm going towards this, the idea of simulation or this place being a virtual reality.
Oh, don't you worry. I've got questions about simulation coming up. That's one of my favorite topics to talk about. Before we get there, though, I want to ask you this question. Do you know, and this is for the listeners as well, we'll play an impromptu game of John Le Bon trivia. Who wrote the original book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz?
Oh, I don't know.
It was a guy called L. Frank Baum, and he wrote that book around 1900. 2 years later, he wrote a book about Santa, and in this particular book, there's a bunch of baddies. It's like the origin story of Santa from when he was a child. In this book that was written by the same guy who wrote The Wonderful Wizard of Oz a couple of years apart, in this book, the baddies want to stop Santa from giving people presents, and the baddies are these like three-eyed monsters, yeah, as in they have a third eye, if you can see where I'm going with this. And these bad guys come from Tartary. This is a book that's 120, 100%, 120 years old. I'm reading this from Wikipedia. I did a little bit of cursory research before our call today. And it says here, L. Frank Baum's origin story of Santa Claus, the life and adventures of Santa Claus, feature mythical antagonists from Tartary who oppose Santa's compassionate gift-giving practices. They are described as the three-eyed giants of Tartary. And this is coming to us from the Tartary page on Wikipedia. How about that?
Wow, that's fantastic.
I thought that was pretty cool. I was planning to throw that in there in the first hour of the call, but time got away from us. But yeah, there you go. See, I don't really know much about the Tartary story, though. That's one of the reasons I wanted to get you on the show, is just tell us. Because this is very popular. Your channel has thousands of subscribers, and some of your videos, just in the last few days, are already up to 20,000 views. So there's definitely an audience for this kind of thing. But I don't really know very much about it, Martin. I don't really know the story of Tartary or Tartary, or I don't know where it came from. I don't know how it got popular. Maybe you did it, Martin. Maybe you're responsible for this. But somehow this topic has gotten very popular. And I was like, hopefully Martin can explain to me the basics of it, because I really don't know.
Tartary's been taken out of the historical narrative. There's no doubt about it. The way we see it is Queen Victoria, she's victorious over something, and she's got Victoria, A-I-A at the end, because it's Tartaria. They're victorious over Tartaria. We think the civilization was stolen, replaced by this current white man, Phoenician paradigm, which we're all living in, which is not that old by all accounts. And the evidence for Tartaria, we can't really just disclose CIA documents, but there's been ones sliding around in the past which stated that any evidence or any information of any positive regard or to Tartaria being the greatest civilization that ever was and not the British Empire should be expunged reality. Well, they can do this, and they do this. They do change reality. It only takes a generation, and they're tweaking it as we go. The book 1984 will show you that's the guy's job. Winston's job is to rewrite history real time. People's memories, they falter, and word of mouth can't be trusted, and a generation or two, and then it'll just be, well, is that how it really happened? It doesn't matter, because we get our information from books, television, and radio, which is all controlled. Unless you're there, I information. You got to go into letters, independent sort of studies, and other ideas of what happened to in my field, specific events. And you find out that it's nothing to do with the official narrative. All of the information that's fed to the masses is controlled. Okay? Controlled. Same as the music, same as all of this paradigm. Anything outside of that is really hazardous and dangerous to the paradigm. Okay? Especially against popularity. So, yeah, it's got big because this is something everyone can get involved with, John LeBon. It's basically you can go into your local city, you can see these mud flood, I want to call them basements or lower levels. I've been to cities to look at these things myself. Some of them are going 2 levels down. In my city of Cardiff, some of them go 3 levels down to get to the toilets, 3 stories below ground level. I also worked in demolition, and I was working on demolition of a department store. And when I went underneath the building, there was an arcade, a Victorian arcade with the windows an inch thick of dust, but they were still there. I put my name in them. Beautiful woods around. So a arcade, a street that was 30 foot below ground level, okay, which was just there. You could have moved into it if you'd wiped it down. It was incredible. I thought, well, who and why is this down here? That was maybe 30, 25 years ago that happened. So, and you can find these anomalous ground levels on all of the old churches. I tried, like with the flat earth and stuff, I try to look for reasons that this cannot be true. This is just a mind-blowing. And every time I dig in, I find completely the opposite again and again and again. Again today just blows my mind to think history can be controlled to such an extent and just repeated and rolled out and controlled with fashions. And they are way ahead in technology.
Well, let me ask you this. The Great Wall of China, for one example, do you believe that is thousands of years old? What's your opinions on the Great Wall of China?
Okay, well, the Great Wall of China is not a defensive position, so it's not military. They want you to believe it's keeping out the Mongol hordes, who are the Tartarians. It's not, because there's all high peaks around, and all our enemy force would have to do is stand on these high peaks and kill everyone on the wall. So that is not a military position. The wall is for something else. People have prostrated in this field that it was to keep giants of Tartary out of China. People have thought that because there was the second flood, because there was apparently 2 Noah's floods, the second one didn't hit China. Okay, and China, as a result, were allowed to advance technologically and as a society, which is why they're the most populous now, because of the wall, as some sort of flood protection or mud flood protection. That idea is up there as well, but I think it is more recent. Yes, I don't think it's far off antiquity. You can see the buildings that are from far off antiquity because they're all melded. And some event has happened to them. They're all shattered. They've had some sort of heat where they're all looking vitrified. These monuments we look into all the time, they're all over antiquity. For an example, the stupas of India, they're given vast, these things could be 1,000 years old, etc. But the society of India is, you can nail, because it's identical to the story, really. I guess the Phoenician paradigm, which is the story of Christianity, etc., because that's their main character, isn't it? I see the overlaps. I see, these watery sea peoples, and the giants all over India, and it's the same people. So it's the Phoenicians at the same time as the takeover of Tartary. So even that, it's the oldest, the Mahabharata and all of these stories are talking of another civilization that went before us, is what I think. And I don't think it was 6,000 or whatever thousands years ago they ever add longevity onto everything. The way I see it is this place, this step on, the new arrivals. I don't even think we belong here. I really, really don't. We all want to go home and we know it inside. I think we put here, it's a mining operation, possibly for giants. We possibly were put in the remnants of a society for people. But hang on, maybe they weren't even giants. Maybe they were the correct size and we've been shrunk, consciously, who knows, or even through DNA experiments. We could have been. There's a thing in the alchemical world called the homunculus, which are alchemically bred human beings, highly intelligent, more so than the people who produce them, when they were tiny humans. So these buildings that we witness in the modern day, they have huge doors and huge arches, Victorian ones, like the monuments, like any of these civic buildings. If you go into your main city hall, they have giant marble columns and these vast halls with domes, and they are just like 200 foot high, and everything is just full of giants. There's just no need. These cathedrals, they're just massive. So this place, there's cities like St. Petersburg. That place was built for giants, and many others anyway. It's just, I think that these people, or the people that are here now, were not the original occupants. I think we were dropped off here. I think this place is not flat. I think the resets are very close together. The control mechanism is that tight that people can't see outside of it. When you do see outside, what you see is destruction and chaos, is what you see outside of these windows at time, where that's how they end it. They kill everyone. They reset the place and they bring in another new paradigm. They don't kill everyone. There's people that are selected. So I'm going towards, this fits right in with a simulation as well, because are you thinking in this in terms of...
I promise, Martin, I hate to interrupt you. I promise we'll get to the simulation. I've got a few more questions for you. How about the ancient pyramids? What are your thoughts on, or the supposedly ancient pyramids? What are your thoughts on the pyramids of Giza and the Sphinx? How do these fit into your framework?
They're in my next book, actually, and they're on my website and they're on my channel of what I propose. And I did an entire series on this. So what I proposed was I was looking into a thing called beaver dam technology. The technology the beavers use to build prevention dams, okay, and their little sets where they live, which are pyramids, pervious to water, etc. And a lot of the inside of matches set is exactly like the insides of the pyramid. So what we did is we basically found some documentation and their urban narratives in historical texts, which would say that the Ark of Noah was in fact a great pyramid at Giza, and it's using beaver dam technology, as in the corners. Actually, there's not 3 corners. There's 6 corners. Inverts. You can only see it from above, but it would break like a stealth bomber. It would break any inundation of water or a tsunami or a flood. And indeed, if this thing was underwater, it would be absolutely fine. And the fact this day is, if you Google underwater pyramids, you will find tens of thousands of hits for underwater pyramids. There are still loads still underwater. What we looked into was, how would they have survived for 90 days in this ark? Because there are some bas reliefs and depictions and paintings which show you Noah and family getting in a pyramid and not an ark. And it says nowhere in the Holy Bible until basically the King James they introduce a vessel. And they don't say nowhere in the Holy Bible about it being a boat of any sort. It might not be. So, in front of the Giza plateau, there is an underground installation, 3 levels, stories, probably more, vast, enough to keep all of the animals, or whether they were kept in test tubes, who knows, and all of Noah and whatever family. And how did they produce air? Exactly the same way as submarines can do it today. They used, in the King's Chamber, this is the resonance chamber in the Great Pyramid, and this thing is called the singing chamber. It gives off a high-pitched sound because the thing is resonating constantly like a tuning fork. And resonance can produce power and produce energy. In fact, it can separate hydrogen and oxygen. It can produce actually oxygen as well. So they're using this technology, surprisingly, for the same period as they say Noah's flood, 90 days, on modern submarines, where they're producing their own oxygen supply. And so we think that technology was used under the Great Pyramid at Giza for them to survive underwater. Evidence, there was an inch-thick salt layer in the shaft of the Queen's Chamber that all got scraped out. Okay, that would have been a byproduct of this production. There was a large granite ball which was found, anomalous. There's been many documentaries about it where we think that could have been like for an exhaust valve, that it would just let it vent for this production and then straight back in again. So we've had loads of ideas about that. So not only Noah's pyramid, but all pyramids, I think, were built as acts. In a reset, there's two types of people. There's the survivors, there's the people who die. Survivors survive because they realize this is a reset system and they prepare to build beaver dam technology acts, and they harness any information they can from the past to the present day or after the reset to bring that knowledge forward. What we picked up from the reset before Mad Max.
So do you have like a ballpark timeline of how old the pyramids and the Sphinx might be? In your framework, do you estimate or guess it's a few hundred years, a few thousand? Or is it kind of too hard to even put a figure on it?
No, I can't even guess, really. I got documents of Babylon, a map of Babylon, which it says it's Babylon, but in fact it's Cairo, from around 1509. I posted about it on my channel, which shows all of the pyramids are on top of what look like mesas. A lot of people say, well, they could be giant tree trunks, but they're on mesas. But they're not in the modern day, are they? So the sand and the mud or what have you has come in later and it's leveled them. And the pyramids seem to be a lot bigger in these as well. So there then, if you can trust the art records or any of the past that they give us, because that's the big problem here, isn't it? So they were there 500 years ago, according to the maps and stuff, but I couldn't verify before then. So I would say they were there for the major reset, the Noah's flood, and I would say that was, I think the calendar was switched off for maybe 200-300 years, so they could, because it was Mad Max year, and they had to set it back up again. That's when the Aryans set everything back up, and then the Phoenicians came in with their ships and their system of infiltration. They basically, well, the way we see it is, everything was okay with the Phoenicians at first, but they were very, very envious of the Tartarian society. It's harmony. They were very envious, so they basically subverted, a bit like cultural Marxism today, if you like, using addictive things, drugs, drinks, these things that they brought into society and corroded from within. And they've done a great job. Look at it now; it's a bloody toxic septic tank, isn't it?
And are you familiar with theories from people like Dave J that the pyramids, the Sphinx, they might be 100, maybe 200 years old tops? They're basically like a modern-day amusement park. Have you heard these theories before?
Yeah, it could be exactly that. The only, major evidence for it in the past, I suppose, is when, Napoleon goes there. This is like, to me, this is like a psyop. We can't even establish whether Napoleon existed. Where's his photograph? I got a photograph of Wellington, Duke of Wellington, but we can't seem to manage, a photograph of who's living in the same time, the greatest of the age, for reason. Just loads of paintings, no two look the same, we get an idea of what he looks like, etc. So he takes his army to Egypt, and apparently some of his men have target practice and shoot the nose off of the Sphinx. Going back in antiquity record, the Sphinx is shown as an African-American, not American, excuse me, but an African woman. Okay, you can see. So they've changed it, added this Phoenician sort of headwear, added, I suppose, dressed it up, if you like, give it the goatee, etc., which got shot off, now is in the British Museum, apparently. So I don't trust that narrative. And the only encipherization of all of the all of the dynasties of Egypt comes from the Rosetta Stone, okay, which Napoleon apparently orders one of his men, go out and find something to make these hieroglyphs work. Will you, good chap? Don't come back without it. Or the guy comes back with a stone, which has ancient Aramaic on it, Greek, etc., and gives you a translation, or you can start translating the hieroglyphics. In my mind, that's also a psyop. How do I think that? Because I found a complete collection of alternative hieroglyphics, or the real Egyptian language, which has anything to do with the Phoenician idea and dynasty. All that to me is just a story, to give, establish these things as being really far off and ancient. Look at the Victorian photographs from 1880s. This thing, the Sphinx is still up to its neck in 1860s. By the 1880s, they've started digging it out. They've dug these trenches down the side. They found that the whole of the bottom of the Sphinx is eroded for water erosion, where water has been bashing and against it for a number of years. So this was underwater at some stage. And they clear all of the top sand of the Giza Plateau to make it a tourist attraction. With Karnak, the photos of Karnak, this place is utter decimated and still looks damp. Up until a certain level in the Victorian photographs. Look at it on Google Earth today, it's all brand spanking new because it's all been replaced in cast. It's an idea of this ancient fake, and the dynasties of what they tell us. Horus, Cyrus and his wife and the secretaries. This is a Phoenician. I got a document which really places. It's the craziest book ever. It's about Noah. His travels in Europe after the flood. He becomes an alcoholic as well and goes, off on one across Asia, and his son Ham has to put a magic spell on him to stop him philandering anymore. So yeah, this story, it goes across Tartary in this book about Noah. It's absolutely mind-blowing. And apparently Noah was a giant, and he was the only good giant. Well, apparently, because all the rest is supposed to be not good.
Well, you mentioned that Rosetta Stone. I'm glad that you did, because to me, the Rosetta Stone is an obvious hoax. Completely obvious. And if you look at the Wikipedia page for it today, they show a photo from 1985 where it was just sitting in an open-air presentation. There's a bar stopping people from touching it, I suppose, but you could easily lean over and touch it. So it's basically just a big slab of rock just sitting there. And the photo is kind of funny because you can see people just walking past as though it's nothing, because that's exactly what it is. But now, it's behind special glass and you have to be very careful. I would be surprised if 50 or 60 years ago, anyone cared about this so-called Rosetta Stone. I think things like this are seeded into the public consciousness and then they become important. So now people want to see it and they know the history of it. And hey, if you try and learn Chinese or if you try and learn Japanese today, there's a program called Rosetta Stone, and that got its name from the original Rosetta Stone. So now people have these ideas seeded in their minds, but even 30 years ago, you can tell this Rosetta Stone, this special, ancient block of wisdom, it's just sitting there in an open-air presentation, and people are walking right on by. No one cares. And that's from 1985, and that's an image from the current Wikipedia page. Can you see where I'm going with this? I don't think any of this stuff is anywhere near as old as they say.
I don't either. Yeah, and it's all theme parked up,
It's theme park, dude. It's classic.
It is.
Theme park.
It is, and the whole of the Egypt thing as well. It's just all a story. Everything is just tales. There's just stories that they give us. It's just, and when you dig in, find the evidence is not there and tells you a completely other story. It's how they keep pushing this stuff.
Martin, people love stories. Humans are drawn to stories like flies are drawn to manure. They just can't help themselves. They love it. They love stories.
Story ever, this one. This is the way this has evolved. It's just been like the never-ending story. It's like we have thought something and then we have sort of prove it, and we've just found like not only like massive amounts of evidence, but like collections. This is the way, it's just the most craziest things.
The Ministry of Antiquities in Egypt, it's a government body basically. The people who are announcing all of these new discoveries in Egypt, that's a government body. And they're basically their version of the Ministry of Tourism or the Board of Tourism. In other words, the government which stands to benefit from tourists coming to visit ancient Egypt just so happens to be the people who are announcing every year, we've discovered a new site, we've discovered a new tomb, we've restored all this stuff. Can people not put two and two together what's going on here? It's just the government of that area who stand to benefit from the tourists fabricating this nonsense and rolling it out, publicising it to get more people to come. It'd be the same as imagine if you had like a minister for Disneyland in the American government, and every time they announced a new theme park, it was coming through the Ministry for Disneyland. It's the same thing with the Ministry for Antiquities, whatever they call themselves in Egypt. Same thing. As absurd as that sounds, as crazy as that sounds, it's the same thing. And that is why they're constantly discovering new things. They're not discovering anything. All they're doing is announcing their latest load of nonsense.
And roll it out, for the new generation. They do.
People love it. People love it. People love it. They'll spend thousands of dollars to go to Egypt for no reason other than to see the pyramids and to feel part of it. They have no interest in Egyptian culture or cuisine. When they go there, they'll take photos on Instagram. Look at me eating this Egyptian whatever. They'll go along with it, but that's not why they're going to Egypt. They don't care about the culture today. They don't care about the food. They don't care about the people. They're going to pay thousands of dollars just to see these pyramids and the Sphinx and the other nonsense. That's why it's so valuable.
Countries are milked to hell, won't they? Think about it. You can go to Chernobyl on a visit now. That's a theme park.
Well, that's I wasn't going to bring up the whole Chernobyl nuke hoax thing, but since you brought it up, just quickly, what are your thoughts on that? Some people don't believe that nuclear energy is even real. They don't even believe in atom bombs or anything like that. What are your thoughts on this?
I think it was a psyop. I think they were hiding something in that area. I really do. There's a large... I've talked to people who have been there. I looked into it a lot. These people who live there all year round, these women who work in the hotel and everything else, they are flourishing. Nature is flourishing. This place has been left alone and is doing very, very well. Okay, it's the same old evidence, isn't it? It's iffy YouTube videos, etc. And I've looked at them all. You can't really see radiation, in action because it's invisible, isn't it? It's a bit like this virus that's going around. It's always invisible enemies. Nothing you can actually see. Prove for yourself. My son, he does like radiation readings with his Geiger counter, and they're registered on a website for Britain, so for the world. So if you go on this site, Radmore, it will give you all of the world, and when Cardiff bleeps, that's my son's Geiger counter. Check, background radiation levels and all sorts. We do. This is the sort of thing we're into. So as for Chernobyl, I was alive when this happened, and I was working in Cardiff docks. And it came across the radio. There's a big black cloud coming over. It's from Chernobyl. It's dangerous. Get out of it. Okay. And all I remember was this like really, really weird black cloud, and these raindrops were hitting my skin because it was quite warm. And they would look like needles that made them like a metallic substance. And when they landed on my skin in slow motion, the raindrops sort of just took ages to dissipate. It was really, really strange. I remember looking at the back of my hand, watching and thinking, never seen anything like that in my life. So something was wrong with the clouds, but they had particularly programmed us on the radio beforehand to say there was something wrong. So I think they've done something to spook people in mills. All of our cattle was infected. You can't eat sheep. They're all eating Chernobyl grass. The milk's infected. They had a really scare program in Wales over Chernobyl. We're supposed to have a big blanket in a bit, see? The map. Back to Chernobyl, there is a huge section sort of north of Chernobyl itself in the Ukraine, and it's just all like there's no reason for this large, huge forested area. It's nothing to do with it. It would be safe to occupy. It's nowhere near Pripyat. It's like miles away, but they're keeping massive, massive area all cordoned off. And there's in antiquity on the old maps a lot of buildings and in that area. I think they could be hiding some sort of antiquity there. They found something, maybe old tech. They just want nobody to ever go there. In the film The Truman Show, he tries escaping. What do? They throw up a nuclear accident. No, you can't go through. We got a nuclear accident. You will die. Just to keep him from escaping. The Truman Show movie. So like the good old-fashioned health scare, which we got now, the good old-fashioned nuclear leak, I think, is also a factor in these psyops. So I definitely think they do that. Reason and the motive, I think they're hiding something in that area.
That's one of my favourite scenes in one of my favourite films. All of a sudden there's a problem with the nuclear plant, and that's when he gets out of the car, and they've got the actors dressed up in their suits. And of course, that's all it takes. Just dress people up in suits, uniforms, dress them up in this kind of paraphernalia, and the masses will believe it. And that's what they're doing right now with this bullshit coronavirus pandemic hoax. They keep showing the footage of the doctors wearing the face masks. That's enough for people. It's like the whole world is one giant LARP. It's a giant live-action role-playing game full of characters, and most of the people, it's all real to them. They don't think twice about it, Martin. They just go along with it.
Yeah, well, this place is highly psychosomatic, so I strongly advise anybody to not look at anything to do with Corona, anything. Oh, I stopped looking at it early on. People were just bombarding me with links from doctors and everything, and I just seen something wrong with it all from the off. I thought, well, hang on. We all know, this is not even a real thing. There's something else clearly happening. They're not going to tell us anywhere near the truth. I'm going to go with that. I'm not going to listen to it or look at any of it. I blocked it off from my reality. And it's not had an effect on me like it has everyone else.
Do you know a single person who's been diagnosed with COVID?
Nope.
I don't know a single person.
I know.
Not one.
I've been in chat rooms with, I asked quite big chat rooms on my feeds, and I've asked everybody in there, hundreds of people, oh, has anybody that's been affected or died? And nobody knows. People are dying, but they're dying of, they knew people die. End off.
Exactly. People die. It's part of this thing that we call life. But I don't think anyone's dying from a so-called coronavirus pandemic, personally. And to me, it's been obvious that this is a hoax right from the start.
I got a girl, she got, they come to her house in America, she told me in emails, and said they knocked the door. She didn't answer. She ran on the back to come and test her. And she said they had the military with them, where they swab you in the mouth. They thought, well, what are these swabs? Can I test that swab? How do you know they're just not rubbing you and giving you whatever it is with the swab itself? And that's how they're going to infect everyone. The guy who invented this test says, it doesn't work anyway for any sort of coronavirus. This thing is used for a marker for virals, for cancer virals, etc. It will show you many, many different forms of coronavirus, but everybody's going to test for that. That's what the guy who invented the test said. So no matter who they test, the one I seen one yesterday, they got tested. It came back positive. They wanted another test after that, second opinion, and it came back negative. The tests are bullshit. They're not going to work anyway.
And they openly admit that there's all of these false positives, right? They openly admit that, and they're also saying in Melbourne, for instance, we've done 100,000 tests in X number of days or whatever, and we've got these hundreds of cases. So even by their own story that they're telling us, it stands to reason that there would be a whole bunch of false positives there.
Well, Ireland come clean a little this week by saying, we vastly overstated the numbers. In fact, a lot of the people died of other stuff, like cancers and things like this, and they were just marking it down as the person. That's what it says on the death certificate, is the person tested as corona, as most people would, because everyone's had a cold at some stage in their life or the flu, so they would have had a strain of it. And then he just marked them all down. So, I bet if you looked at the statistics for a year ago of how many people died of, gangrene or renal failure, I bet all of them have just disappeared now. Or corona.
And that's the problem too, is with these statistics, because how much can we trust any of it now? Now that we know how easily they can lie about this coronavirus, how can we trust any of the statistics they're giving us?
How are we going to look at this for itself and the evidence that any of this is just not made up? It's just all sort of rubbish.
What do you think's the agenda behind this? What do you think? Maybe there's multiple agendas. But what do you think they're trying to do here? What's their end game, do you think? A
couple of schools of thought, this weird death cult, this rule in the place, go by things are happening in the sky, and there's a lot of conjunctions happening right now. We're going into the age of Aquarius. People think that something is definitely on the horizon. So if that was the case, then they are sort of closing up shops for the winter because there might be a reset coming, major one. Okay. So that could be a scenario. It's nothing to do with any virus. They just closed the world down for the common cold. It's insane to my mind. I can't believe everybody went with it. The mind control has just been living. They must have zapped somebody with the Queen's speech, because everyone is hypnotized completely to this stuff, masking it up. And that is the way that they're going to go in the future with it. It's just like, no, I just can't handle any of that. It's incredible. They did that. Endgame. Well, obviously, everyone's pushing Bill Gates, with this vaccine and all that. But I think it's deeper. I think there's more going on. I think it's social distancing. There's something else going on with that, because that's bullshit. And people need human interaction to survive in this place. This is how we are as humans. We need one another. To take that away from us, well, that's something deeper. That's something more spiritual. there's something else going on. I really, really think something else is going on.
I agree with you. And for me, this leads into the idea of a simulation. So what we'll do is we'll come back and talk about why people can't see what's going on. The majority of them don't seem to have any idea the scale of this hoax. So we'll come back and talk about why people don't seem to be able to see that, how that might lead into the idea of a simulation, and all related things in just a moment. First, let's go to the second block of credits of people who make this possible, all these calls possible, at johnthebond.com. And on the other side, Martin and I will pick up where we left off. We'll see you in just a moment. This presentation, just like all content at johnthebond.com, made possible by the members, including the 2020 members as of July 2020. CM, Critical Sinker, Jumpy64, Just a Ride, Lester Bot, Lloyd Miller, Thirst for Truth, Human Being, Enric86, Oregon D, Woob, Lysa, Stingray, Gareth, Dr. Ake, Mr. Jones, Dipey, Casby, Mark Dakarsky, USATX, Rogadept, Thor, Sigma Lane. The latest 2020 members are Angel of Truth 64 and Dubs. The latest full members are LSP, Joel, Duff, and Jay Zo. And of course the super agents, number 1, Alistair Kane, number 5, Fung, number 7, Technonosis, number 11, Apoc Shaker, number 21, Waterman Chris, number 27, JPC, number 33, Hando, number 34, Truth 34, number 88, Nate M, and number 138, Original Simulant. Those are the individuals from around the world making all of this possible. So if you're enjoying the presentation, those are the people you should be thanking. Now on with the rest of the show. So getting back to this idea of the people, Martin, you tell me, why can the people not see this? You can see it, I can see it, most people listening to this right now can see it. How come the average person hasn't yet worked out that this is another weapons of mass destruction style hoax? Do you have a theory as to why people don't seem to get it?
Hypnosis. I think they've been subject to hypnosis, some sort of mind control magic deep into the psyche, where even if they question it themselves, they will close themselves down because, nothing outside of what they tell me could be true, could be a disaster to somebody. People would just, I don't know what it is. It's just a lot of people are very needy and they need a savior or the government in this case. It's beyond me when we started trusting them all of a sudden, what they did. But that's really spooky in itself, that they started trusting the governments after all what we just recently found out about all these people, or what we know of them. People should trust them so freely. It's incredible to my mind.
Are you open to the possibility that the masses, they're not really capable of thinking for themselves? Is this an idea that you're open-minded to, or do you still believe most people can think, they've just been misled?
No, I think that is a factor also. Are our thoughts even our own? The way, consciousness is, there seems to be a certain amount of people that just flabbergasted why the rest can't see. So it's not even difficult, to see. I could show 1,000 examples of sigils, subliminals at play on everything. When I leave the house, I could point them out to people and say what the real intent of that shape is, because shapes and colours have an effect on the psyche, psychology, on the psyche of the human, and they can be geared in a specific way or folded and shaped in a specific way. Most people are happy to go along with the Phoenician paradigm. They promise them, you can work all your life, work for your mortgage, and then when you're old, you can maybe have your house if you're lucky, if you play it good and you're a little bitch. But then we'll rob you blind and take it all away from you when we kill you off at the hospital at the end. This is the reality for people, even, in the best of us from them. That is what they dictate for everyone, and sold at an instant on the stock exchange. The whole thing of us just not being sovereign, not being, to them, we're just cattle numbers, and this is evident now. Think about, like, I looked at a shopping centre in my city where they're letting people back in, and there's just lines where they're showing people which direction to flow in. To my mind, that has zero to do with social distancing, or has zero to do with any virus. That is just directing people like cattle around a shop. They had these signs ready to dictate to people. Far too soon, the virus happened for my liking. These things showed up almost instantly, like they had them ready. I think this thing's been planned out in advance. I think the psyop on the internet has been been thought out in advance how people will respond. They know most people are fast asleep, and now we got a detraction from the real, or the virus. race wars, and all these movements, the black rights movements and everything. All good intent, don't get me wrong, but they're playing right into their hands. It shouldn't even be an issue. That shouldn't even be a word, race. That's them again. That's like saying, by even mentioning that word, that there's different peoples on here when there's not. There's just one soul and one peoples. Just nuts what they do to us. And, they rule us by concrete. They divide us, keep us divided to rule us. That's what they do in this place.
So have you heard of this idea of the NPC meme? This idea that a lot of the people around us, they just do whatever they're programmed to do. So if social media, celebrities, television tells them to believe something or get angry about something or be scared of something, they're not really capable of filtering that. They just have to do as they're programmed. And that's why they can flip-flop between everyone has to stay home and stay safe to we have to protest Black Lives Matter, and then to actually no, we have to stay home to stay safe. They can just flip-flop because the programming has flip-flopped and they'll do whatever the programming says. There's this concept that maybe a lot of the people around us, they're not capable of independent, critical thought. It's not that they can do it, but they've just been misled. They genuinely cannot think for themselves. Have you heard of this idea, and what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've heard of this idea, and it really does seem like that is the way. It really does. And they were flip-flopping. It's like in the book 1984, when he's changing history, he tells the entire population that the choppy ration will be increased by 25%. Everyone's like, hooray! Oh, this is a great day. A day later, he's like, actually, no, they're not doing that now. And everyone just gets on with their lives, without any thought. The program. NCPs, yeah, I'm thinking that there's a lot less people in this place than I initially thought. Really, we don't know what's happening in the streets away from us. It might not even be rendered. If maybe your telephone called somebody who was even in that street away, it might render for the telephone call. But is it even there? Real time, the way this place is. This NCP theory at first I was wary of because I thought it might make people. I thought that if it hit the fan, people would see that they think that they're only NCPs, they're not worthy, and think more inclined to kill them or something in the case of an apocalypse. I was a bit wary of that mind, but from experience in this place now, that's exactly what I'm experiencing. Is just they are so willing to flip flop and go with whatever is told, without any thought, on automatic. Physical thinking is just not even there. And you get that knee-jerk response if you even try to, actually, there might be something else going on. What? They'll fight for it. They'll fight to protect that program.
Yeah, and they will be the first ones to try and shame you for pointing out that the emperor wears no clothes. So when we're told all these conflicting stories about the so-called coronavirus, and when people's lives are changed and businesses are destroyed and families kept apart, all of these things that no one would say is a good thing, when they're being told to do that by the government, and you say, hold on, the government story is changing, those same people will be the first to try and shame you. So this idea of, we shouldn't call them NPCs because it's dehumanizing, it's like, well, hold on, how are they treating you like a human? So why are people worried about, I don't want to think of them as NPCs, that's dehumanizing. What do you think they think of you? Look at how they treat you. They're not treating you like a human. So why the hell are you worried about you not treating them well? I agree. It's ridiculous.
Me and my son do an NCP analysis of people. It's like there's a neighbour over the back of his, like he constructs stuff, he builds stuff, and he gets all the community involved, and he employs people to work. And I think actually he's doing a creative thing. Is he actually a participant in this reality, or is he an NCP? And I think he's a participant, just on a different level of participation. I think there might be different levels. People who will have an input on reality and be able to affect change in reality. So the real players, and there seems to be different level players as well, which are needed. The NCPs, which is just walking around aimlessly, just not in it, not in reality, not affecting change on positive, or just not even in it, not even in the game.
There's nobody home.
Nobody home.
There's nobody home, mate. And that's the beauty of it. There's no need to worry about them. Most of the non-player characters, they're happy enough. Okay, they live their lives. Many of them, from what you can tell superficially looking at them, they seem just as happy with their lives, if not more happy than me and many people like me. So I'm not sitting here and worried about the NPCs. There's nothing to worry about. They're happy. And I leave them be, and for the most part, they leave me be, and there's no problems. Even if we were literally in a video game and these people were literally bots that still would not make me feel any compulsion to mistreat them at all. So I've personally got no issue with the NPC concept. And as this ridiculous pandemic thing rolls on, I see more and more evidence that this is in fact the case, that these people are non-player characters. There's nobody home. Which leads to, I guess, the final section of this call. I wanted to get your thoughts on this. You've mentioned simulation a few times. Tell us, do you think we're living in a simulation? What do you think this world is? We're not on a giant spinning ball going around the sun. That part we've worked out. So what is this place? Why are we here? What do you think's going on here?
I've been trying to make sense of some of the paranormal experiences of my life that, are not talked about and not accepted, but they are a reality in my realm. I've seen stuff, experienced stuff in this realm. So I want to make sense of all of that. And, for this to be such a reality would definitely explain all the paranormal experience, all of ghosts. It would explain all of the mud flood, the history, the change in timelines. It would definitely cover that. It would explain everything that's going on now. It can be taken out of, the context of modern day physics of how this place works. You get down to the fundamentals of it all, with the quantum mechanics, etc., and you can make sense of it. The measurement problem, is apparently that reality is not here unless it's consciously perceived or observed by us or measured by us. So, Nick Funkitword, don't you? YouTuber.
No.
Anyway, he was watching the sun go down, the moon rise, 2 nights ago on a live feed. And there was a guy, and he was looking at it, and it was giving a silver sliver of light to his feet. It was giving him that subjective experience where a guy who was in the chat said, yeah, I'm in Amsterdam at the moment, and I'm getting exactly the same thing here, hundreds of miles away, where the sliver of light was landing at his feet. How is this possible? So to me, I think that it is subjective, but I think it's also objective, because I think it's to be shared by everyone, that moon experience, but also for yourself. So that, again, to me, fits right in with the simulation idea. This realm is malleable for a start off. I've put it to the test and it's happened. I have intended in my mind things or circumstances to happen, and they have gone exactly the way that I wanted them, to a spooky level, really. So affecting reality. So this place is malleable. If this place is like quantum mechanics would explain that, with a wave function and collapse, that this place collapses for the observer and there's nothing there. Does the tree fall in the woods if there's no one there to hear it, etc.? This place would be unrendered out of our perspective and only there when we get there. To me, that makes a lot of sense with some of the stuff that I've experienced in my life. Again, it covers everything. It does cover everything. And if we are in a simulation, well, then consciousness is the computer. Consciousness is the computer. And what are we computing? What is consciousness computing? Is an experience, an observer experience shared for us all, out of a field of maybe infinite, I think finite possibilities in this case. And physics knows this is happening on a fundamental level. You could think of it in all sorts of ways, though, really. You could think of it as, hang on, could we be in a television movie watched by others in another realm? Is this like a television show, or are we in a movie? Because if this is a program, consciousness is the computer. It's computing reality that we perceive. Who is the creator of this? Where is the source of this? Is what I'm wondering. What I'm trying to get to. The source code, if you like, for this place is what I'm trying to get to. And it's an incredible journey, but I'm working on a thing called my big toe theory, which has been out there maybe 15 years, since about 2002, by a famous physicist called Tom Campbell. My big toe. So I've been basically affiliated with this gentleman, to do some work with him, doing conventions, actually. Quite good numbers, these ones as well, these conventions. It will be part of the Consciousness Research Institute, where we're going to push the boundaries and try and find out exactly what this place is. Even this physicist guy, this guy's really, really ascended. And, he worked with the Monroe Institute on, all these programs that went down in the Monroe Institute, considering mind control programs. This guy, he worked for the military by designing defense systems, is what he's famous for when you Google it. That was his, and working for the Monroe Institute, which done all that mind control, strange stuff. He states that they could put thoughts or words with machines into people's heads and make them do them through these machines. Somebody said something to me in my comments this morning. I was going through, and he said that a friend of his had taken a DMT trip, and basically he said all of a sudden he appeared in a room where there were two gentlemen stood around a television screen on a table talking about it. He said they were really shocked to see him, and they were basically perturbed, saying he shouldn't have been there. He got hurried out of the room. He said next thing you know, he clicked at his thing and he was back where he should be. He thinks that he popped out of the program, like in the Matrix. He thinks that he popped out of the program. He wasn't supposed to be there, and he popped back in again. They popped him back in again, is what this comment said. I thought that is really, really interesting, because this is what antiquity tells us as well, with the Olympians looking in the pool or the reflection and seeing like a telescreen in there, if you like, of the people in the earthly realm for them to, interact with or give things to help them on their quests. I thought it was really, really intriguing, that. So, don't know the fundamentals of how this place works, can't be nailed, it's indistinguishable, but there is something going on, isn't there? It can be experienced in the real world, in experimentals. Like the double split experiment, for example, which can be practiced in your home if you set it up right. So that can be done.
So going back to that source code idea then, do you think whatever is behind this, or whatever force is some way interacting with this, do you think it's on your side? Do you think it wants to see you succeed? How do you feel about this thing, whatever it is, if it is there? What are your thoughts about it? And what are your thoughts about this world? Is this a world that you're happy to be in? Do you feel like this is a good time and place, a bad time and place, neither of those things? What are your sentiments towards this existence at this point in time?
The source code, I feel, is there. I feel it now, and I feel that it is aware of me, what I feel, this source code. And I do sort of feel that it is looking out for me in a way. I really, really do, because there's so much come out of me, I just burst through with this, if whatever I call the creator, whatever it is, this is there. And I see it's a massively exciting time. I wouldn't miss it for the world. And if it's a reset, it's the crappiest reset ever. They want to get it on. I think that, this is like, if no one can see this, then they're blind. This is the most monumental time in history since the First World War in 100 years. Everything is about to change, unrecognizable to our past. They're going to manage to extinguish the past, change history in only a generation. The coronials that will be born now, the next baby boomers, they're going to be completely mind controlled. There'll be hardly anyone shines out of them. Notice each generation, the past characters disappear, and people with shiny talent, seem to just not be there the way they were. More people are getting controlled each generation that goes by, and now, after this, will be complete control. Their agendas, their weird transsexual agendas and all the other agendas that they're pushing at them. Knows what this future society is going to be like. I don't even want to see it. I really don't. It's just disgusting. I'm looking to run away to the woods anyway.
So this is the big problem, isn't it? This idea of some people do feel as though they're here for a reason, but they don't like the direction they see society going, technology or whatever the case might be, their governments, society, whatever the case is. They don't seem to like where things are headed. And it can be difficult to reconcile those two things, can't it? To, on the one hand, try and be grateful for being here and feel as though things are good when you don't enjoy the changes that are happening. These two things don't really seem to go well together very easily, do they?
I'm frustrated. I know I project. I'm happy for Lucky Martin, but a lot of that is just tears of a clown and just doing an act. Really, I'm frustrated and I'm really upset about what's going on in the world at the moment. And I've been upset all along because I'm an empath. I can't help it. I not to. I do try not to. I block it off, but it's just there. Frustration is, specific position in what's called the truther movement, which is in my mind the only resistance. I don't see anything else not resistance out there at all, and there's nothing moving. It's just everyone, people are going with different insanity after another psyop, which is obviously a psyop, and they will go down an avenue of thought, which just lose them forever. Bye, nice knowing you. Gone on the Q road or whatever road they go down, and just lost in bullshit, basically, and never getting to the real answer in this place. That's frustrating to me. There's a lot of love, but I see pain in a lot of people. A lot of people are scared. There's a lot of fear, that shit. So I try to take that out of people. Try to unburden people. What are you fighting for? Death. I don't even know what that is. This might be a case of people are thinking they're about to be ascended. There's a lot of people think that there's a change coming, a massive spiritual awakening, and a lot of people raptured or in the work of simulation, taken out of the game to the next level. And that works on a spiritual sense. That works on a fundamental sense as well, because we don't even know what's happening. We know that the death experience is completely Phoenician controlled. They do all of this weird religion on you with incantations, using magical words while they're doing this thing to you, and they can't wait to get you under the ground. It's always 6 foot, and there's a lot of ritual with getting rid of you, isn't there? You don't get a say in any of it. So I think that's part of it. It's like a lockdown spiritually as well.
Well, you know what I sometimes think, Martin? What if I was to wake up one day in the next level? I had progressed from this realm to the next one, and in the next one there was only player characters, and there was a few hundred of us sitting around. I think before long we'd be thinking, man, this is boring. Bring back the NPCs. They gave us something to do. They gave us something to think about, people to work with, and people to laugh at or laugh with. Or some of the NPCs are pretty good at artwork and this kind of thing. They don't necessarily have to have a player character within them to be able to do things that we can appreciate. Bring back the non-player characters. I think we would get bored of only having player characters very quickly. So I try and enjoy this realm for what it is. There's bad and there's good, and I just try and focus on the good, Martin. And one of the good things is that we have this technology. We can talk to people from all over the world. You're in Wales, I'm here in Malaysia. Who knows where we'll be next time we reconvene. But we need to wrap up this call, Martin. The 2 hours has flown by, and we've covered a lot of topics. So I'm looking forward to seeing the comments in the comments section below. But I'll give you a chance now to give us your final thoughts for the call. I want to thank all the supporters here at johnthebond.com for their support, making all this possible. And now it's time for Martin to give us his final thoughts. I'll put links to his work in the show notes in the comments section below, so go and check those out. But now it's Martin from Wales, the man himself, the Mudflood man, to tell us where to find his work and to give us his final thoughts for Sometimes Recorded number 31, being recorded on July 2020. Martin, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Thanks for the invite, John and Bon. I've totally enjoyed this chat. It's been really, really epic. Got some great buzzes. Really good talk. Yeah, you can find me on YouTube. I got the Tartarian channel, the Martin Liedtke channel, and the Flat Earth British Think Tank channel. I also have my website, which is flatearthbritishinfo.com, where you can find everything about this subject on there. I've also got maybe 20,000 books. Vatican Archive releases 15,000 of them, and all my other favourite books. Antiquity, maps, collections, art, everything you can imagine, all linked up on my resources page or flatearthbritishinfo.com, which is a fantastic site. So yeah, I'll be live again later. I'm going to do another vlog today. Later, I've got some big stuff. Well, that's what I'm up to. And no fear. It is absolute rubbish, and you got to keep your vibration up to win the day in this place. That's 100%. I don't let any of it affect me. I just can't be bothered. See straight through it. For some reason. No, thanks, John.